Hey, Michael here. So this is the OnePlus 10T. I've had my SIM card in here for a while now and I have some thoughts, but I just want to start off to say that I am a massive OnePlus fan. I've bought all of the main phones they've released since the OnePlus 3 all the way to the OnePlus 9, which is when I stopped. The last OnePlus I liked was the OnePlus 8T. Super fast and super clean performance, and I still sometimes use it today. So the 10T is kind of in the same category, not a pro, but still enough flagship potential for it to maybe be a good choice, right? You've got the latest chipset, an unbelievable amount of RAM, crazy fast charging, it has the potential. And then just picking it up for the first time, I felt something was just a little off about it. And it wasn't just me, I handed this to a friend of mine who was also a veteran OnePlus user, and he said the same thing. This thing just doesn't feel great, it feels very generic. It's big, it's flat, it's tall, and it feels a little thick in the hand. And this kind of feels like every other middle of the road Chinese phone, a phone that wants to look fancy but actually kind of feels a bit cheap and like everything else. There is a really nice texture on the back called Moonstone, which is smooth but grippy and really changes in the light. Like if you hit this thing at the right angle, it will become very shiny and reflective, and other times it goes just full Batman mode, which is cool. Now they've also removed the famous physical alert slider on the 10T, which is kind of like Ferrari suddenly deciding not to paint their cars red. Like, why would you do that? I've also noticed some really alarming creaking sounds coming from the frame of this phone. I believe the OnePlus 10 Pro had some structural problems, but that was a little thinner than this. This is thicker, and I can feel it creaking sometimes. So I checked to see if Jerry Rigged Everything had done his torture test, and the results really did not go well for this phone. So do not accidentally sit on this thing or put pressure on it because it will snap. So let's talk about something that is actually great on this phone, which is the performance. It still has that super silky need for speed thing OnePlus are famous for. Everything feels lightning fast and there is so much RAM on here. I have the 16GB of RAM model, which is the same amount as my MacBook Pro. It also has 7GB of RAM swap, taking it up to a potential 23GB of RAM, which is ridiculous. Apps stay open for seemingly forever. I was playing Call of Duty and then I swapped over to Genshin Impact and back again, and it was still all loaded in the background. Now I did have some early problems with overheating on this thing. It actually got crazy hot when loading Genshin Impact. It went up to 45 degrees just installing all of the packages and stuff, and it kind of had a warm temperature in general use to the point where it was not nice to hold. Luckily an update came and these problems seem to disappear for now. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 really allows you to tear through anything. I was hitting close to 90 FPS on Call of Duty, super smooth frame rates, which is great, and Genshin Impact will also perform well on all the ultra settings, so top marks there. So cameras. This has always been a weak spot for OnePlus. They just never seem to be able to keep up with their competitors, and you see this 4-circle cutout here implying a kind of certain camera setup, but when you unbox this thing, OnePlus kind of gives you a hint that there are only 2 camera cutouts that actually matter here. We have a 50 megapixel Sony IMX766 main sensor accompanied by an 8 megapixel ultra wide, a 2 megapixel macro lens, and a light ring. The main sensor takes nice images, it retains plenty of detail and is plenty bright, although I would say it over sharpens a little too much in general, which it doesn't really need to do because it has optical image stabilization. The default setting on the 10T is HDR Auto, and it does take the HDR look to the max. Every image is lit up to the extreme, which can be good, but if you don't like that look, then it's pretty strong, so you can just go ahead and turn it off. So there is no Hasselblad branding on the 10T like there has been with recent OnePlus Pro phones, and the color science, I would say, is a little flat on the 10T. There isn't much pop in the colors, but this gives you room for editing if you wish. The 8 megapixel ultra wide really feels very cheap, like something you would find on a phone costing a few $100s less than this, and I think even my old OnePlus 8T could give it a run for its money. Night mode is pretty good and at a glance creates a nice appealing image with a nice aesthetic, and there are some extra features like long exposure that are fun to try out. So video is capped at 4K 60 FPS and has a bit of a problem with white balance. This shot is so overly blue it's insane, and the stabilization in general is very rigid. There is certainly a jolt to this footage when you're moving along with this camera, but it's not the end of the world. It would have just been nice to have seen this thing smoothed out a little. But if you keep it nice and steady and just pan along, it will produce a good picture. But again, the image descends into absolute blueness. So charging is one of the highlights on the 10T. You get a 150 watt charger in the box, as well as that classic red OnePlus USB-C cable. So to get to the max charging rate, you have to dive into the settings and turn on smart rapid charging. And in optimal conditions, I got this charged from 2% to full in around 15 minutes. Now, battery life has been okay. I didn't go super heavy in my usage, getting around 5 hours of screen on time over 1.5 days, which is pretty middle of the road. There is also no wireless charging on this phone, so if that's something you value, then you're out of luck. This is something that's been cut to reduce that price tag. Now the screen on the 10T is a nice panel. It's a 1080p AMOLED, not the brightest, but still a good looking screen. You've got HDR10+, a 120Hz refresh screen, although I did read some reports of this phone getting screen burn within a week if you're using the only on display. The other thing about this screen is the aspect ratio. So this is a 6.7 inch screen using a 21:9 aspect ratio, and this is a tall screen. Most people are not going to be able to reach to the top of this device, so if you have small to medium hands, then definitely something to consider. The fingerprint sensors on OnePlus phones have always been good, and this year's one is great. It's really good. It's an optical sensor, really quick to register and use in general. The front-facing camera is in the center position, and this year takes pretty light looking selfies and pretty poor looking 1080p video, if I'm honest with you. A few more observations. The haptics are nice and tight, not industry leading, but decent. There is also a new 15-piece antenna system, which is supposed to improve signal, but I live in China and it's kind of hard to assess this because the signal is just so good here. We also have dual stereo speakers at the top and bottom that I was actually really impressed with. The IP water rating is just a mess. It depends on what country and network or carrier you use that will determine whether your device is covered with the IP54 rating, which is still a pretty low rating and standard, but that's what you get depending on where you are. Now, in terms of the software, I'm in China, as I've mentioned, so my device actually runs Oppo's Color OS instead of Oxygen. It's a neat operating system, clean design, plenty of tricks and features with a ton of customization options. I actually think if OnePlus are gonna go this way in terms of software, then Color OS is not a bad direction. I know we would all prefer the lighter feeling of Oxygen OS, but that's just how it is. So at $640, I think this device is priced well, but I also feel there is no special reason to buy the 10T. It's just kind of sunk into a bland middle ground, and there are loads of other brands working hard to get your attention at this price point. One of them being iQOO, and you can click on the box on the left to watch my review on their latest phone, or if you want to see my thoughts on the amazing OnePlus 8T, which I love, you can click on that video. And don't forget to subscribe so you can watch some more videos when they come out. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.